Zach, thanks for coming.
Good to be here.
So let's zoom back a little bit. And so you've been at Google for 8 years.
Yeah, so I started off at Google working for the Google Earth project, and I took Google Earth and I put it onto the Audi navigation system. I left in 2013 and explored entrepreneurship things, some companies which are actually still running. But I went back to Google in 2016 because they just pay so well, right? And so I worked for their YouTube division from 2016 to 2019 as a senior software engineer.
Mm-hmm. And you were at the HQ during the shooting.
Yeah, I was at, in fact, my friend or my coworker got shot at because he was at the cafeteria when the shots rang out. And he was literally dodging them because they went through the window and shattered the window, and he was able to escape with his life. And yeah.
So what is your takeaway from that experience?
People do not like to be censored. Like, the person that was the shooter had been censored, or actually she had been demonetized because there was a blanket order that went through that anyone that had 100,000 subscribers or less got ads removed off of their channel. Now, this person had gone all in on their channel, and so when it got demonetized, they did not take it very well. And so this person came up from San Diego and camped out actually at the Mountain View headquarters for Google. The police actually questioned this person and let the person go, and then the next morning came up and came in through the back patio, through an unlocked door, and opened fire.
So you were talking about a study that talks about sort of the blowback of censorship when we were speaking before.
Yeah.
Can you? What are your thoughts on the psychology of censorship and you know how that affects users?
Right. So Google had a paper called something like Psychologically Induced Stress from Algorithmic Discrimination, in which they lay out sort of the ramifications that users are going to, of blowback when users get discriminated against by algorithms. And so this paper explored how a company could mitigate those stress responses. And so, for example, one of the things that they noted is that under crowding situations, people's purchasing went up. And so what they discussed in this paper is like, how can they induce certain stresses that invoke overcrowding, and that would cause people to purchase more. And so this paper is really interesting because it kind of explores like all the different ways that users respond to stress, and they note particular patterns that cause people to buy more, and also how to reduce the stress of feeling like the users don't have any control. So one of the things that they list is that they give users knobs that they act kind of like the close button on an elevator door. Like, you've ever been on there and you hit it and the door doesn't close and it finally closes? Well, it turns out that button's often not hooked into anything. It just like turns, bright yellow to give you a sense of control. And so in this paper, they're describing how they can give users that sense of control to like uncause to get their site less shadow banned, when in reality it's hardly doing anything at all.
Right, and so now we have a list of blacklisted sites that's come out. Includes mostly conservative sites, a couple left-wing sites like Media Matters are in there. Are there other lists like that? That's just in one product, right?
There's silos of lists in different parts of the company. They've been, as they get disclosed to the public, because it contradicts like the narrative, like when they tell Congress, we don't keep blacklists, and people are like, well, what about this blacklist here? So Google's been trying to transform their blacklists into these machine learning algorithms in order to hide them within the company. But effectively, there are multiple blacklists throughout the company that's been discovered and not acknowledged by the company, even though there's overwhelming evidence, such as the disclosure that I've opened up today.
And so would you agree that the majority of the censorship is affecting more right-wing, but it is affecting the left-wing, and so it's not a totally polarized situation. We were talking about Ford Fisher, who's actually a journalist. He works with Subverse and Minds, and he got punished by Google for covering a KKK rally, even though obviously he doesn't support the KKK.
Right.
So a lot of that blowback is happening. Are those just unintelligent algorithms?
It's people within the company deciding like who should be on the blacklist, and exactly who those actors are that are deciding these blacklists is something that's I was never able to determine. It's something that needs to be investigated because these people yield a lot of power. They've effectively got right access to our culture. And Google's denying that they're using these blacklists, and we all know that they are. Like Alex Jones got banned, by Twitter, Facebook, Google, and it all happened within like a couple minutes of each other. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, come on, there's a plan, there's an agenda, they're acting on it, and it's obvious to anyone that sees how these companies collude together to ban the same person on all the different platforms.
So, but don't they know that censorship doesn't work? Like, don't they know that right now, in response to this, Web3, sort of the new open source decentralized web, is like trying to find ways to route around, because there's so many smart people at Google. I mean,
and what happened to Gab?
Right.
Gab was like, we're gonna be an alternative to Twitter that can't be censored, and then a bunch of trolls went on there and started posting a lot of objectionable content, and then Apple's like, oh, we've got to take a stand, so we're gonna eliminate Gab on, right? They're colluding with Twitter.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that they believe that if they apply not pressure at a single point, but pressure at many different points along the pipeline of getting an app to the user and then how they experience that content, then they can effectively suppress competition.
So do you think we're going to get more transparency out of this? What's your prediction for the reaction?
My coming forward has been kind of a watershed moment. I've sacrificed a lot, and fortunately that's paved a way for other people that know what's going on. And a lot of the people have no idea, like even if they're leftists, they don't understand the scope of what Google is doing. And so part of my disclosure is to help educate America and more about what these lists are doing and how they're being utilized. And the people that still work at Google, I hope that they're going to see this and they're going to speak the truth. And I think that that's happening right now, and I see that it's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Minds was banned from the App Store, Google Play, for 6 months, and then, as I mentioned before, I watched Dorsey on the Rogan podcast say that pornography was totally acceptable on Twitter, and Twitter is still on the app on Google Play, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
So there's total inconsistency in enforcement. I appealed and they let me back. So or not me, us, the app. But are you trying to avoid using Google products now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Google is so big that essentially what they've created is a panopticon. Okay, so pan meaning all, opticon meaning eye, so it's the all-seeing eye everywhere you go. Before I was doing this disclosure, I was like, oh man, I can't use Chrome because it's going to share my location when I have an IP. So I have to ditch that and go to Brave. And then someone's like, hey, I want to send you an email. I'm like, oh, I got Gmail. I can't use that, right? Because they're gonna be able to see all of my data. And then and I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go on YouTube and check into Tim Pool. And I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I've got do I have my location on? I go on the apps. Oh yeah, it's sharing the location whenever I use the app. And it's just it's everywhere, right? And the only thing that stops them from a targeted assassination is that we're going to take their word for it, right? But the thing is that whenever I put in a boundary, oh, Google wouldn't do this. Oh, Google wouldn't ban the phrase that had to do with the constitutional amendment of a country during a referendum, they cross it, right? Oh, they wouldn't ban, words out of a translation dictionary to make the president's tweets sound crazy, and then they step across that line, and so it's like, wow, it's like what's the limit that the panopticon will go? And at this point, I don't see that there is any limit. And so when your mind starts to wonder, it's like, well, what happens if there's no limit? Well, there's been books that have been written about that. 1984 has been very influential. A Brave New World has been very influential. And Animal Farm as well. Fahrenheit 451. And when I read those books, I thought it was like really fascinating, but I was like, that's never going to happen. But my mind was trained in the patterns. And so when I start seeing a totalitarian panopticon heading towards this direction, influencing the way that people use language, I realized that this is something that we as a culture need to face because it's actually an existential threat. And at this point, it's a point of national security.
Yeah, and they're sort of tricking us into voluntarily being our own surveillors because we're carrying them around. And yeah, it's all about consent and new tech, which can protect people's privacy, digital rights, freedom. And all right, so final question, what is the document that you find the most significant?
Well, I actually find that the document related to deleting translation words is the most significant because it kind of captures everything that is wrong with Google. Like when they say they're not political, like this is political, and it ties into collusion with the New York Times. But people on the internet seem to think that the YouTube query blacklist is the most important, and that's 42 pages of it's just a bottomless like WTF pit, right? It's wow, it's like exposes clown world, and people are just going crazy on that. They're posting about it, and so
there's names on it.
There's names on it. It's like and so my recommendation is people go to projectveritas.com and then they download the disclosure and they look at the YouTube query blacklist.
Great. All right. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.